send it to Ityas Chakra. I think he's hearing
Okay.
me. Vishwaji, Vishwaji,
Yes,
please,
yes.
please send it to the Insta family group. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Great.
All right. So we're live. Perfect. All right. We're live on Facebook and we're live on YouTube. So let me get started. Welcome, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Varun Gandhi, Love and Abundance. I want everyone to know that this is the sign language for love. So I always throw it up. It's also on my t-shirt, Love and Abundance. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. So we've gone live on Facebook and YouTube, and we're also live on Zoom as we have our panelists join us. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. I really quickly to everybody here on Zoom want to ask this question. Look, I'm in the U.S., Los Angeles. There's some interesting times going on. Elections are going on. I'm sure everybody knows about it. Biden or Trump? Just really quickly, everybody, put it in the comments. I want to know who do you support, Biden or Trump? Because really quickly, we're not going to have a debate on this. I just want to see who's supporting which side more. So if you could put wherever you're from, no matter if you're from US, India, wherever you're from, wherever you're joining in from all across the world, I would love to hear if you're going for Biden or Trump. Just put it in the comments really quickly. And as you do this, I'm going to introduce the show. The show is an exploration of our world. We talk about issues pertaining to the South Asian community. But these issues are not limited to us. They're shared across all communities. The question is, how can we move the needle on these issues? And one answer that I had was through conversations, by talking about it, by learning about it, by reaching out to people who don't look like you and having these uncomfortable conversations. We call this the land of the free, but I don't believe that we have freedom. Why? Because we're bound by our hate, by our shame, by our abuse, by rejection. We're bound by all of these differences amongst many other chains. And that's what this show is about. These are the issues that we're talking about in What's Your Story? So this right here is the 8th episode so far. And thus far, we have covered topics like mental health, colorism, cultural appropriation of yoga, Hindu exodus, and also women's abuse in South Asian communities. In each of these episodes, we've had panelists from all over the world. For our mental diet panel, we had the CEO of the Chopra Foundation, who's based out here in Los Angeles. He's Punacha, and he works very closely with Deepak Chopra. Other guests that have been part of this program are Kavita from the Dark is Beautiful movement, and Renu Dhillon, who is a powerful advocate for women's empowerment, stemming from her experiences with an abusive husband. And she was also part of Diljit Dosanjh's last song that he released. She was part of that video. She was in it. So we've had diverse guests from all across 3 continents, Asia, Australia, and North America. And soon we're going to include panelists from South America, Africa, Europe, and maybe we'll throw a penguin in there from Antarctica. So we cover a wide variety of perspectives for each discussion as we reach this international audience. Thus far, our episodes have been watched by more than 50,000 people. So really quickly, before I talk about who I am, I want to bring up that the next few topics we're going to cover are men's abuse, Indian pride, and we're going to do an episode on period shaming, which is huge all over the world now. So who am I? I have a background in science. I'm a researcher, and I've published several scientific articles in top environmental engineering journals. But while working as a consultant in environmental engineering, I realized I wasn't making much of an impact. I was in this field of water quality, and the quality of water in America was already so good. So I realized I wasn't making much of an impact. And that's when I began exploring outside of my traditional career path. I found storytelling. I realized that stories are how we form an understanding of our world. Stories drive our perspectives. The story that we create, or the stories that are fed to us, determine the course of our lives. And there are many, many, many examples you'll see throughout history, or even currently when you're talking about marketing. The best marketing campaigns are those which create a story. Like Coke, for example. They're synonymous to happiness because they have a tagline, open a Coke, open happiness. But Coke, really, the product is not about happiness. It's acidic sugar water that doesn't make us any healthy. But through marketing, they've advertised to creating a story. They've put themselves synonymous to marketing through to a word like happiness. Why? Because of stories. So why do stories matter? I did my schooling in Dubai in this Indian school board called CBSE. Indian history that was taught to me said that Aryans had invaded India, civilized Indians, and trained us and taught us in what we know thus far. And going off this story, anybody would assume that our ancestors weren't even capable of constructing a building without the help of Europeans. But little did I know that his history, is littered with one-sided narratives. Until maybe a few years ago when I was watching talks on YouTube on this channel called Sangam Talks, and by a historian by the name of Dr. Raj Vedam. And he revealed a lot of this true Indian history that we're going to talk about today. So before we move on to our panelists, I want to really bring up a few quick announcements. That this is a safe space. There's no judgment, so please share your experiences or ask your questions without any reservation. Ask questions at any time. When you think about it, type it in the chat, and as we go through the course of this discussion, they will be answered. So our panelists. First, we have Ankit Mishra. He is pursuing his graduation with political science as a major. And he's the admin of a very popular Instagram channel called Indian Talkies, Indian.talkies on Instagram. He strives to present Hindu culture in an artistic way and attract the youth towards moral values. So welcome, Ankit. Can you tell me what got you interested in teaching about concepts in the Sanatan Dharma?
Thank you, Varun sir. Thank you for your kind introduction. Firstly, when I started, this lockdown period helped a lot. In lockdown period, everybody decided to do something new. What I decided was making a Instagram page of Indian heritage. Basically, I started the page with a simple motive to make people aware about the Indian heritage that we possess. Basically, tourism. The sector which I decided was tourism sector. I decided that I will post about tourist places about India, Indian temples. I love Indian temples, Hindu temples. I love Hindu temples. Their architecture is marvelous. I decided to make people aware about the architecture, the beauty that India possesses. But when I started the page, I realized that the atmosphere on India, about Indian culture, about Sanatan Dharma, about Hinduism, uh, is maligned. The atmosphere was very bad for Sanatan Dharma. There are rubbish things taught about Sanatan Dharma. Mm, there are malicious lies that were spread in the name of Sanatan Dharma. When I read them, I decided to share some facts about them, about the Sanatan Dharma, the true sense of Sanatan Dharma. So eventually, the motive of the page changed from tourist places to Sanatan Dharma. I used to post about Sanatan Dharma very uh, alternatively, like with few intervals of time. But now my page is totally devoted to Sanatan Dharma because I realized that it is the need of hour to make people aware about Sanatan Dharma because Sanatan Dharma is eternal. It is the truth. It is beauty. the people who will understand this, they will gain a lot of things from it. So I decided to make people aware about it, and that's how the page started. And now it's running. I'm getting popular support, thankfully. And thank you for inviting me for this participation.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ankit Mishra. You're so, that's why I reached out to you. You have a fascinating page. You talk about a lot of, deep Indian history and culture and religion and everything. So I really appreciate what you do. Really important. Thank you for doing everything that you do. Um, our next panelist is Sri Kutupanda Nath, who has an MA in Sanskrit. He has authored several very interesting books about history. Some of them are Machines von Aryans, Vedic Space Technology, the Ketu Chakra, and Outer Orbit Planets, amongst others. So welcome, Sri Kutupananda. Can you share a personal story that got you so interested in these topics? They're very deep topics, and we're going to bring them up in our conversation, but can you bring up a personal story?
Yeah. No, my attention came to this subject very long back, like when I was in 10th standard, and I read the History of Hindu World by P.N. Oak, the famous writer who talk about Taj Mahal is Tejo Mahal, that writer.
Wow.
So I read it's a big volume book, like it's 1,000 pages book, and it totally made me realize like what was real and what was projected, like what was the history before and what is projected by British historians. Then since then I'm attracted into this subject, but in between the gaps my career pursuits and everything comes in between. But at that time, I heard that the word Vaimanik Shastra, the Viman Shastra, the Yantra Sarvasva, and the technological advancement in those ages, even the advancement in engineering, the basic metallurgical engineering, alloy making, steel making, but it continued. But last few years, I decided because I am already in the spiritual kind of field. So I decided to focus my whole attention on researching on the ancient Indian sciences. So in that I visited many libraries across the India. I visited libraries in Nepal, Sri Lanka, where the most Indian manuscripts are there, in Germany. And then I wrote those books, the Vedic Space Technology or Machines Born Aryans, like how the technology went from India to Germany or from India to Europe. That's very fascinating story actually. Means we have only like 5%, not even 5% of evidence, because everything is it's planned so systematically since times of William Jones. You might have heard about William Jones,
Right.
who founded the Royal Asiatic Society. So since then the manipulation is going on.
Wow.
They manipulated the Bhavishya Puran, Bhavishyotter Puran, the other Puranas, the Mahabharata, uh, even the core text of Hinduism are manipulated.
So you brought up Mahabharata. We're going to definitely bring that up in our conversation.
Yeah,
We're going to talk
that
about
will
it.
be the interesting topic.
Yeah.
So my
What was that
pursuit
book
is
you
like,
mentioned?
which one?
The book that you
PNO,
first, History of?
History of Hindu Civilization. It's in 2 volumes in English.
Okay. History of Hindu Civilization. I just want to write it in the chat so that people...
P.N. Oak. P.N. Oak. The writer is P.N. Oak.
P.N. Oak. Hopefully I spelled it right. Oak. O-A-K.
Yeah, O-A-K.
Perfect. All right. So yeah, thank you. Welcome, Sri Kutupanda.
Yeah,
Our
my pleasure.
next panelist is Amey Pradhan. He is the co-convener for the Overseas Friends of BJP in Germany. Amey, welcome to the show, and can you share your experience in speaking about these topics?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Varun. Am I audible to you?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So my name is Amey Pradhan. I live in Germany. I've been living in Germany for past few years. I also work here. I'm also an engineer, and then I also did my management. I work as a consultant presently. So I've been associated to all these topics from last 16 to 17 years,
Mm.
and I've been also very interested in politics. And
Little louder if you
top-
can speak.
okay, maybe I will connect my microphone. It's
Uh,
okay. Should be better now.
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Sorry for the delay. Yeah. So I've been associated to politics and Hindutva and Sanatan Dharma from last 16 to 17 years. I've been reading several topics I've been interested into. I've done my own research based on internet, on some books, on some other things. And it's always fascinating to find out the facts which we don't know. And this has always excited me to go deep beyond, where Ankit was talking about the temples. Yes, our temples are more fascinating than the monuments, what we actually see in India as a heritage monuments. Okay. I don't want to name the heritage monument, but our temples are like more scientifically designed. Uh, as Kutupananda said very correctly, that our history and our science was so diverse that it went from India to world. Now everybody knows this in the background. They don't speak about it. You have to give a platform to everybody to come up, to speak, and the world should know what India is. Our ultimate aim is to become a Vishwaguru, and sooner or later we will surely become. It's that we started late in the post-independence era. When you see the post-independence era, the level of education was quite low in India. But once we started building up the universities, once we started giving the education to people, Indians went everywhere in the world. They are dominating US. As you're sitting there, I'm sitting here in Europe. People are sitting in the other part of the world. So, I mean, it's good that we start discussing this topic. We start educating each other in the society, and everybody should know what our history is. And like, let's be proud Indian. Let's be proud of our culture, heritage, everything. So I would only say this much in my opening remarks. Thank you so much for
Sweet.
inviting me on the
Thank
panel.
you. Yeah, thank you so much, Amey. Welcome.
Welcome.
Uh, and our last panelist is V. He is pursuing his high school education and operates a successful Instagram channel called itihasa.chakra. He presents Hindu culture through concept art, forms, and educate the youth about ancient Indian civilization. So welcome, V. You know, you are so young, a high school student, so like what, 13, 14, 15. Yet you're very, very interested in these topics that took me 20 years past high school to enjoy. So can you share a personal story about like what got you so passionate about these topics?
Sure. First of all, thank you for inviting me to the panel discussion. And let me narrate it to you. My story is quite similar to Ankit because I too started the Instagram page during the lockdown. And it all started when I was reading the Chandogya Upanishad. So one shloka in the Chandogya Upanishad, let me recite it to you. It speaks of the sun that evam. Sorry. Am I audible?
Yes.
अथ तत ऊर्ध्व नैवोदेता नास्तमयिते kala eva madhye sthata tadesha shloka. So here it refers to the sun, and it says that the sun does not move, he does not rise, he does not set, he sits in the middle. So uh, this indirectly points out to the heliocentric model of solar system. So, what was written in the Upanishad thousands of years ago was just discovered by the Western scientists a few hundred years years ago. Yet the whole world credits for the scientific discoveries to them, and not just the heliocentric model of solar system. Many more scientific discoveries can be found throughout the Vedas, the Puranas, the Upanishads, and people just tend to ignore them and discard them as fantasies or mythologies. Another fact is that the Western world continue to believe that the earth is flat, but the Hindu civilization from thousands of years ago worshipped the earth as a circular globe held up by the Varaha avatar of Vishnu. So it's time that the youth and the whole world realizes the magnificence of this culture, and we should reclaim and learn from our past.
All right, that's very inspirational. Thank you so much for sharing that, V. So we're welcome to the show, V, and now it's the perfect time to get into our first question. This is there's been a recent theory, I think, released in 2018, 2019, that showed people from the steppe region came to India around 1500 BCE, and they're these people known as the Aryans. So starting with Amey, I want to talk about this theory and what is there truth to it, or what is the truth around our origins? You're on mute.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing is, as far as I know about this Aryan Dravidian theory, so this was basically designed somewhere in the British era. So you can say the 19th century. And the most common thing is that not many people know that it was designed by a German called Max Muller. So when Britishers were in India and they realized that Indians have their own culture, and then to get a momentum on the psychological effect on Indians, to colonize them, to really get Indians into the British system, they have to influence the education system. So they decided some theories how to divide. So they basically designed this education system, what we presently have in India. And they coined this theory called as Aryan Dravidian theory. So in Aryan Dravidian theory, the Max Muller said he studied the Sanskrit, and he studied Sanskrit and he found that Sanskrit is very similar to Latin. And then he said Sanskrit and Latin is very similar language. They both are cousins. And that is why Sanskrit came from Europe to India. This is where the Aryan theory started. Okay. There is absolutely no logic behind it, because all the language have got some sort of similarity somewhere. I mean, if you see the word sugar, we call it shakkar in Hindi. In my mother tongue Marathi, we call it as sakhar. In French, it is called sucrose. In German, it is called zucker. So there is a similarity in these words and few other words everywhere in the language. That doesn't mean that this language is coming from somewhere else. Okay. Even the word no, it starts from N everywhere in most of the languages. So these are the common similarities in the languages. Of course, the grammar of Sanskrit is much complex, like the grammar which is there in some European languages, like German language. So they decided, and what happened is like some politicians in South India, specifically we have to name here is the Periyar. His name was Ram Naikar, yeah. So he started peddling this Aryan Dravidian theory, and then saying it's like, okay, the Tamilian Brahmins in South India are basically Aryans, they are not Dravidians. I mean, they are not Dravidian. The basic thing is the word Aryan doesn't exist in Sanskrit. The word exists in Sanskrit is called Arya. Arya means a noble man. And India was once upon a time called as Arya Vrata. That is a land of noble people. So everybody was called Arya. Now, if you go to a ISKCON temple, you will find everybody calling each other as Prabhu. So in the ancient time, people used to call each other as Arya. So that is that word Arya is. Aryan word doesn't exist in Sanskrit. Dravid, yes, Dravid word exists in Sanskrit. So there was a story, is like how Dravid, what is Dravid basically? So there was one question when Shankaracharya from South India, he went to Varanasi and somebody asked him like, who are you? So he said, I'm a Dravida. So Dravida doesn't mean that he is belonging to a Dravidian sect. Dravida in Sanskrit means the southern region. So what he wanted to say is like, I'm from South. Doesn't mean he belongs to any kind of a Dravidian system. So this is where the Aryan Dravidian divide was created during the British era. And it was then carried forward by the politicians, which suited to their narrative, because regionalism does exist in India. And our politicians post-independence era did a lot of stupid things. First of all, they divided the states based on the languages. So this was the first thing, is like how people started the regionalism is like separatism from each other. So people fighting between, in southern India, they started, okay, we want Andhra Pradesh, we want Tamil Nadu. In Maharashtra, they started fighting Marathi people for Maharashtra, Gujarati people for Gujarat, and all these things. So Dravidian theory basically suited to the narrative of them. Now, if you ask what is the Dravidian culture, the politicians in South won't be able to answer, because they don't even know what is the Dravidian culture. If the Dravidian culture is like 10,000 years old, as they describe, there's nothing. Under the Dravidianism, there is so much of religion conversions which are going on in South India. How are they allowing it? When you don't accept Aryans as Indian, then how do you allow a religion from Europe which is coming to South India, and how are you accepting that religion? So these are some of the things that people have to realize. And then there are a lot of theories which have then refuted this theory. So it's like one of it is a DNA test. So basically all the Indians have got the same DNA from North India to South India. So it clearly says that there is no different DNA. So some people say, okay, Aryan didn't come from Europe, they came from Central Asia. So there are all sort of rumors, and basically where does this Aryan theory is propagated? It is propagated here in Europe. It is propagated in US. Now I've met some professors here in Europe who are the champions of the Sanskrit and Aryan Dravidian theory. So they said, no, Aryan came from Central Asia, Europe, they are not Indians, they invaded India and all these things. So I said, like, do you even know where the Europeans came from? They don't know. The Americans don't know where the Americans came from. Who was in America 600 years ago? Nobody. Before the Civil War and the Boston Tea Party, there was no American. Only the Red Americans were there. Yeah. Why the name Red Americans came, everybody knows, because the Columbus went searching from India. He landed to a place, he saw some tribal people, he started calling them Indian, they became Red Indian.
So I want to bring in Sri Kutupanda here. I want to bring in Sri Kutupanda here
please.
Talk about. So can you go ahead?
Yeah. No, my stand is somewhere between, because those theories are not 100% made up. They were put based on the comparison of the language, archaeology, the genetic history, and culture. No, I will not take the origin of Aryans to Europe or the mid East Europe, but there is some middle line, like which is the most closest culture was to the Vedic culture. It was Iranian culture. The most closest language to Vedic Sanskrit is the language of Avesta, which is the religious book of Parsis or the Persians earlier. They were worshipper of fire. They were used to do fire rituals. They had the genealogy of the Bhrigu race, Bhrigu Vansh, Angiras. Their deities also are parallel with us, like Ashwini Kumar, Vayu, Apam Napat. These are the parallel deities. So the truth is in somewhere middle. Because the history of India, you cannot, there is no evidence. The stone temple cannot give any carbon dating. And because of the much manipulation is happened by the likes of William Jones and the British archaeologists, or the who started the Royal Geographical Society and all those, we cannot trust the inscriptions totally, because I still don't trust those Ashoka's inscriptions, which are conveniently found at some places. Like they are going to build a railway track and they find some Ashoka's inscription. Because how you find the past point or some point in Indian history based on evidence, you have to find either by script, script which was used for the language, astronomy. Now, I will just mention 2 points. They are very important. There is no archaeological evidence of any other script ancient than Brahmi. The Ashoka's inscriptions are in the Brahmi script. And from Brahmi, they say that different scripts are developed across India, all the scripts in Asia. And they put some timeline for the Brahmi. Same for astronomy. Like they will say the zodiac signs were introduced in India from Greeks. So all the books which do not mention the zodiac signs are like before 500 AD, something like that. And the books like Ramayana, which has the zodiacal signs, they are post 500 AD. This kind of confusions are there. And somebody has heavily manipulated these books and evidences. They have removed the zodiacal references in Mahabharata. So now in the that Ankit was saying, like, to prove the Mahabharata date, you have to use you can use astronomical dating, but the astronomical dating references in Mahabharata are contradictory. Whatever they exist in the current version.
So Shri, we'll get to that. We'll get to the Mahabharata question again.
About Aryan invasion theory, I am going to just say one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
The genetic evidence supports it. And even if you the parameters of 19th century genetic science, like nodes, head size, the ratio of nodes and head, because in Rigveda it's clearly said those people who don't have nodes are enemies of Indra. They are called anasats, dasats. They are called who don't have sharp nodes. They have blunt nodes. Now, which race in India have that characteristics now? In 19th century, those were measures like features, facial features. Now we have steppe gene and everything. I'm not saying like even if we accept migration from Iranian region or Afghanistan region, that I will say was true Vedic region of Vedic culture or civilization. From there to eastwards. But it happened long back. It's not like it happened some 2,000, 3,000 years back. It happened long back. And when it happened, there were already old races in India, which are still current in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. And the islands in the Andaman, in Jharkhand. in Bihar region. So racial differences are there in India. We cannot deny it.
Okay.
My opinion is we should consider it.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that perspective. Ankit, please go ahead.
Okay, Kutupanda sir mentioned about the linguistic evidences and archaeological evidences of Central Asia being the somewhat like Vedic culture. But I want to mention that first of all we have to consider Rig Veda text here, because Rig Veda is one text consisting of 10 books. Out of that 10 books, we have to consider each book as part of one family. So here the second, third, fourth, seventh, and sixth, these are the books which are from one family, and the remaining one you can say are of non-family. Okay, so the books which are I am saying of one family, the two, the second, the third, the
Mm.
fourth, and sixth and seventh are referred as old Rig Veda, and the remaining ones are referred as new Rig Veda. And the Central Asia, the culture of Central Asia, um, takes its form from the New Rig Veda. The culture of Central Asia is similar to the culture mentioned in the New Rig Veda. The deities that Sir was talking about are all mentioned in New Rig Veda. So why can't we consider that the migration took place from India to Central Asia, and why we consider vice versa? Why we should not consider that the migration took place from India to Central Asia? Because the area that Rig Veda conveniently points out is the Rig Vedic area is the area of Western Afghanistan to Eastern Uttar Pradesh, and the old Rig Veda, it also mentions the similar area.
I want to support this point.
Definitely.
I think he's breaking up.
Yes, yes.
V, go ahead.
No,
Okay, I want to support his point that he is saying that the migration took place from India to the West. So, according to a genome study, the most successful in terms of tracing back. So, the most successful patrilineal genome sequence is the R1A11. So, this sequence can be found in more than 1 billion people, and the speciality of this sequence is that it can be traced from a son to father and again to the grandfather and thus on. And the whole 1 billion population can be traced back to a single person who lived approximately 15,450 years ago somewhere in the plains of India. And the so this is the oldest sample found of the sequence. No other area shows any older samples. If there are, then this theory might be wrong, but for now we can assume that this one is the oldest sample of the genome sequence, and from this the sequence spread throughout the areas like the Ukraine, the Siberian areas, the Europe, the Iran. Also, a point to be noted is that the last ice age ended sometime 12,000 years ago. So, as uh, as the Hindu scriptures say, and mostly all religions refer to a pralay, so a disaster where the all life forms are destroyed, and Manu, a single person, remains, and then he again starts the civilization. He again starts the human race. So, if we can trace back these 1 billion people to a single man who lived in India, can't he be Manu? And also the time frame is also similar, because when he lived, the ice age, which can be referred as Pralay, was coming to an end. So this strongly supports that the migration took place from India to the other lands.
Exactly. The R1A1 point that the V Ityas Chakra mentioned It is found in most of the tribes in India. Like they say that the R1A1 group, the haplogroup, suggests that the Aryan race. It suggests the Aryan race, but the pure Dravidian tribe in South India has 27% of R1A1 genes in them, DNA in them. So it contradicts the point mentioned by
And
this
also,
so-called.
genetically speaking, North Indians and South Indians share most of the genetic material. So what we see, the differences in them are totally part of the adaptations of the climate and the geographical conditions in which they live, and the outer factors affected by it. So the genome code is mostly similar. So they cannot be distinguished as different, but they were one.
Mm. Okay. Shri
And
Kutupanda?
I would like to add one point here,
Ye-
Varun. So when we
Oh.
were talking about the Iranian culture, right, being closest to the Hindu culture, we have to understand that what is the oldest culture, what the science accepts today is the Greek gods that we hear about, the Hercules, Apollo, and all this, Zeus. So if you read the stories of Hercules, these are much similar to what stories that we read about Krishna. So there are a lot of theories which are available on the internet that the Greek gods and the theory of Greek gods is adapted from India.
Mm.
So Apollo being the god of sun, you know. So from there, it was like lot of cultures in Europe were influenced from India, and like those people before the Roman Empire spread across with the Christianity and the Catholic across the Europe, they were called pagans, which is known to everybody. So they had their own culture, which is quite similar to what we have a culture here. So they used to burn the funeral pyre of the dead bodies. They used to worship fire. They used to worship gods. So there were a lot of similar things. So it doesn't mean that those were Indians who came back to India. There are a lot of cultures which India has given to world. Now China had Buddhism, Japan has Buddhism, Korea has Buddhism, which went from India to Southeast Asia. We cannot say the Buddhists here in India came from Southeast Asia to India. So I totally support what the other two panelists were saying, V and Ankit, that it could have been reversed.
Mm. Okay. Very interesting.
I
No,
want to add a
see,
point.
one thing I want to say,
Go ahead, Shri.
uh, what we are going to associate our pride. See, these matters come because of the pride for the nation or the country. Are we going to associate our emotions to the land mass? Because even if you use the modern concept of nation, which was developed in the Europe, or even it is in the Jewish scriptures, that nation or lord of the nation, nation means a tribe.
Mm.
Jews define the nation as a tribe, like they had some 18 tribes or something.
14.
So even if we were in the Europe, we were in the Middle East or in Iran or in Kashmir, we should associate ourselves. That's my opinion. We should associate ourselves with the tradition and not the land mass. Because if we consider as a land, there are not enough evidences for putting this theory like whole civilization of the world went from India to other places. Then how you will show the script? The Egyptian script is answered like there is evidences. Even the Indus Valley script is answered than Brahmi. No one is able to put the direct relation between Brahmi and Indus script. There are some theories like some because of that Pashupati seal and all, but you will find the close connection with the Indus Valley to the Mesopotamia. The Gilgamesh seals, you will see the same seals in their Indus Valley where the two tigers are beside him standing. And the flat. Even if we're talking next about the Mahabharata or the Purana stories, they had the use of chariots. So to have the war with chariots, you required a flat land, you required deserts. In the Mahabharata war, there are descriptions like how the dust came out when one chariot run fast. Those things are not possible in Indian terrain, or even in North Indian terrain, except the maybe Rajasthan desert. So those kind of like evidences of chariots, horses, language is there, and the connection, because someone said about the different books of Rigveda. Now the Atri family, which has third or fifth mandal of Rigveda, fifth mandal, their kings are mentioned in the Mesopotamian history. The kings like Atrahasis, the names are mentioned. So all these evidences suggest like the Middle Asia roots for the Vedic civilization. I am not talking about the landmass as India. We are talking about history, and history is always about the peoples, history of the people, not about the stones or rocks.
Okay. So you brought up Mahabharatas, so let's actually get into that. Let's have the conversation about. I mean, one thing is that when I was studying, in high school, we weren't taught about Mahabharatas. I didn't even know what it was, right? So it wasn't part of any kind of education system. So why isn't it part of any education system? And we also talked about some theories, maybe conspiracy theories around the Mahabharata. So can we bring those up? Let's talk about it. Shri Kutupanda, I'll start with you.
Yeah, the Mahabharata was not brought into the text because the Indologists and modern historians, they don't want to accept like Indian civilization was at that rich. They don't want to even say like we can build the houses, we had script, we had good at astronomy. All those things are easily proved from the Mahabharata. And if you put the earliest date of Mahabharata, like I will say like 1500 year BC, or the most probable 2200 year BC. Even that date is very far. That date put Indian civilization much ahead than all other civilizations. But they don't want that. They don't want to say there was a king like Yudhishthir or Janamejay exist in India, or even in, I will say, in Iranian region, about the Indus civilization region, 2000 years prior to the Christ. They don't want to accept that. So for that, all the games are played. Like the Vikramaditya is totally removed from the history. Now we in North India, we follow the Vikram year. South India, we follow Shalivan Shaki year. But those two kings, whole academia, whole history historians, they say these kings never exist.
Wow.
For whom the year, the Shaka, is going on since last 2000 years. They are saying those kings never happened, they never ruled, they are mythical kings. So if this is the condition about Shalivahan, how they are going to accept the Yudhishthir who was there 3000 years before him? So the whole view is not to accept Mahabharata as a history.
Okay. So Ankit, go ahead.
Yeah.
You're on mute.
Okay, so as told that the mythical kings of Sakwana and Vikramaditya. So I was going to at this point later in terms I talked to you regarding this the Puranic timeline. Yeah. So basically it is like the Mahabharata. After the Mahabharata, a complete list of all the kings that ruled the entire Indian subcontinent is mentioned in Bhagavad Puran, with a complete with accurate timelines, with accurate time of their rule. The whole list of all kings, and you will be shocked to know that the Maurya Empire that we believe existed in 3rd century BCE has been put to 15th century BCE. And the 3rd century BCE, the contemporary to Alexander, was actually Chandragupta from Gupta Empire. It's very shocking, and we don't have evidence as of now, and no one talks about it because we have been taught like this. No, this is the basic reason why we have not accepted Vikramaditya and Shakwana, as was saying, as proper real life kings of of Indian subcontinent, because we don't acknowledge this part. Because when we will acknowledge this, that Mauryans existed in 15th century BC, Guptas existed in 3rd century BC, then automatically the Vikramaditya, the king that existed, will automatically come in the timeline of 102 BCE to 15th century AD,
Yeah.
something like that. So this is the proper basic timeline that the Puranas, the Bhagavad Purana has provided us with, and there are several references of it too. But we have acknowledged Vikramaditya to be a mythical king, and that's very unfortunate. That's totally very unfortunate because he was one of the greatest king. It is mentioned in our Puranas that after the start of Kali, after 3,000 years of the start of Kali, there will be a divine personality who will rule this Indian subcontinent. And that divine personality is none other than Vikramaditya. And we have to research more about him because it is the greatest hawks of the century. That Chanakya and Mauryas were contemporary of, Alexander the Great. When Alexander invaded the Indian subcontinent, it was Mauryas and Chanakyas were contemporary. No, they were not. The Chanakya has no mention in the text of Megasthenes. Megasthenes, the Greek scholar who we refer to when we talk about Mauryan Empire, and who we consider as the authority over when we talk about Mauryan Empire, he has no mention of Chanakya. He has mention of roads, flowers, and administration of Mauryan Empire. How can he miss Chanakya? He cannot, simply cannot. So it's very evident that Chanakya did not existed in that period. He existed in 15th century when Mauryan Empire existed. Why did it happen? Because the names were very confusing. The names were very confusing. Like the first ruler of Gupta Empire was Chandragupta. Also, the Mauryan Empire first ruler was Chandragupta Maurya. Secondly, the second ruler of Gupta Empire was Ashoka. Was Samudragupta, but he adopted the title of Ashoka. Samudragupta, Ashoka, Devanama Priya. He adopted that titles. So they confused, they mixed, they merged the two personalities of Ashoka, Chandragupta with the Gupta Empire, so that they can deteriorate the value of Vikramaditya, the famous king. Now he has become a mythical king just because of this fact that we ignore the timeline of Bhagavad Puran. When we consider that timeline, all facts will be very clear in front of us.
Wow, very interesting. Very interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. Sri, I know you had something to say. You want to add to this? Sri? Hey, Sri, are you there? Hello?
I would like something to say.
Go ahead.
Ankit made a very good point about the Chandragupta Maurya and Alexander equivalent, the time, how it's fixed. What we should look, like we should not accept those Greek records or the Alberuni's records. I can tell you, like having an oath, like that Alberuni's India, that book is totally fabricated. That was a fake book. Because the original Greek records are not exist in Greek language. They exist in Arabian translations. So from the Arabian translations, they translated back to Latin. It's like going from this language to that language to that language. And then they say like Alexander came to India at this year, and at that time some king was ruling whose name was Chandragupta.
Mm-hmm.
Why we should trust on our own Puran, Mahabharata, and our own whatever now exists we have, the scriptures. There are copper plate inscriptions of Janamejaya. Today only I was reading about it. Like Janamejaya gave 2 copper plate inscriptions, one to Kishkinda, king in Karnataka, and one to the Kedarnath Mutt in Uttarakhand. And those have the clear ear of Yudhishthir Shak. Like when Janamejaya was alive, in that copper plate inscription, it is mentioned like 78 years of Yudhishthir Shaka, I am granting this land to the Kedarnath Mutt. Now, these Janamajaya's inscriptions are totally ignored everywhere. These historians have removed the books which mention Vikramaditya's era. It's a kind of plot. It's a criminal plot, actually.
Greatest injustice ever done to any king was Vikramaditya. Moreover, I want to add to Kutupanta sir's point of view. There was a inscription in 7th century. I don't remember the king's name, but it says like that after 3700 years of Mahabharata war or something like that, in Sakas, after 600 years of Saka era, Sakwana's era. So it gives us a proper date of Mahabharata that existed in 3102 BC, something like that. So the inscription in 7th century provides us a proper date of Mahabharata as well as the Sakwana's era. Now, when it gives the proper timeline of Sakwana's era, it is not very difficult to date Vikramaditya as well as the Sakwana starting of Sakwana era.
So what
I
date
don't know
is
why we are
Vikramaditya era? What year? What timeline?
78 AD.
70 exactly.
Okay.
The purpose is they don't want to accept the Vikramaditya's era, which is before the Christ era.
Exactly.
That's the main problem. The removing the Vikramaditya from Indian history, the whole only purpose is not to accept Vikramaditya, the king who started the era before the Christ or that Roman era.
Okay. Wow.
Also, this only resulted in merging the personalities of both the kings of Chandragupta and Ashoka. Moreover, the Max Muller, he also gave the date of 1500 BC just because of his mindset of a Christian missionary, because he believed that in 2500 BC a big flood has existed, something like that. So he did not consider that Indian subcontinent have a culture that could surpass 2500 BC. So he gave a random date of 1500 BC, giving 5 layers of Vedas, approximately 200 years each layer for each Vedas and one Upanishad. So 500 BC of Gautam Buddha, that was very definite, and before that 200 years for each layer of each Veda and each one layer of Upanishad. So he gave the 1500 BC date from that calculation according to his. That random date was completely baseless. Just out of his mind, he made a theory, simple theory, which is as baseless as it can be.
Wow, interesting. V, I know you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Yes. I want to support Ankit's point, as he said that the inscription mentions the exact date of Mahabharata. So before that, we must focus on the river Saraswati. Rigveda is the first literature in Sanskrit, and the Nadi Stuti and various ruchas call the Saraswati River as the mother of floods, the mother of civilization, the greatest river. So we can tell that at the time when Rigveda was written, or when the Rigveda was compiled, the Saraswati River was flowing in its peak. it was receiving waters from glacial sources as well as monsoon, and that period can be attributed to almost 7,000 years ago. So the theory that Aryans came to India and they compiled down Rigveda and all the Vedas is totally absurd, because the Rigveda mentions even older period than it. They refer to Saraswati even older than the Aryans. So after the Rigveda, Ramayana describes Saraswati as a normal river, and it happened when the Saraswati was cut from its glacial sources, and it totally dependent on the monsoon rains it received. In Ramayana, it is described as a normal river. In the Mahabharata, we see that there is an exact quote. I want to refer it. 1 minute. So it says that after the Kurukshetra war, Dharmaraja Yudhishthir comes to know that none of his forefathers, relatives, and the brothers who died in the war has got the heavens. So he requests his guru Vyasa to guide him. So Vyasa tells him that for naturally dead people, the Shraddha Karma is performed at river Ganga. And for the unnaturally died people, like due to war, accident, suicides, the Shraddha Karma has to be performed on the banks of river Saraswati. And when Yudhishthir goes to perform the Shraddha Karma at Saraswati, the river is described as just one feather flowing off it. So, according to the study of the paleo channel of Saraswati, it is said that 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, the wet climate totally broke up and the river died. So we can say that the Mahabharata, when Yudhishthira went, is sometime around 5,000 years ago, which refers to 3,000 BC, and it corresponds exactly to the inscriptions that mention the exact date of Mahabharata. So this is a chronology that in Rig Veda, the Saraswati is referred as the mightiest of the rivers. In Ramayana, it is referred as a normal river, and in Mahabharata, lastly, it is just a small stream. So it shows that how the river died away, and according to the study of the river bed of the Ghaggar Hakra Paleo channel, we can also date these three scriptures. So these are much older than what was thought before. And an interesting fact is that the Bible mentions that the earth was created sometime 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. And the historians, the many European historians discard what is older than Bible, that a civilization, that such magnificent culture can exist, and the Bible does not mention it.
Wow, that's very interesting point. I want to move the conversation a little forward with Shri.
One point I would like to add.
Yeah, go ahead, Amey.
As we and Ankit rightly mentioned about the Saraswati civilization, India is always called as Sindhu Saraswati civilization. Okay, so now we have now transformed that to Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb. But Indian culture always says Sindhu Saraswati civilization. Now nobody knows where the Saraswati river is. It's a lost river, right? There's no traces. There is a scientific study going on to find out where is this river gone actually. But there are some traces found in North Africa. So there are some deserts. So the scientists found out these deserts were previously rivers. So the new scientific study, which is not still, you're an environmentalist, maybe you can find out more about this from the research papers or something. So the river at some point will die out and become a desert. So we can, from that theory, we can assume the deserts of Rajasthan, or which is spreading out to Pakistan now, where previously could be a river. then later became a desert. So there can be different possibilities. On Earth, of course, we will have different geographical changes time to time. Yeah, there will be new mountain ranges coming. There will be land separating. The deserts will move forward, or the water will move forward. It can be anything. So, even to consider the geographical things as the evidence of our religion and the land is also not true. So maybe when we say is like the dust was flown, we cannot say it was dust was flown in Rajasthan or somewhere else, because we don't even have the traces of the geographical changes. Maybe it were written in the Hindu scriptures, which were burnt later by the invaders. So all that information is lost.
So that's interesting, because even in America, I see that how certain rivers have dried up and now they just look like sand beds, and at some point, I'm sure that'll turn into a desert as time progresses. But yeah, I see that kind of playing out over here in America as well. So, Sri Kutupanda, I want to talk to you about some of your books that you have written. You have studied ancient technologies that I've never heard about in history. So can you give us a background of these technologies and what time frame did they exist? And can you talk more about this?
Yeah. No, time frame, because the books which we have on those technologies, they are in Sanskrit. And those books mention some other like 70, 80 different books on same technology. Like for example, Yantra Sarvasva, which talks about different machines, automobiles, planes, spaceships. Then there is a book Shakti Tantra, which talks about 32 types of electricity generation. Like most people know now, like the Agastya Samhita, the battery and those things. But there are 32 types of electricity generation is given. There is the one interesting example I will give. There is one book called Krutak Vajra Nirnay. Vajra means diamond. Krutak means artificial, like artificial diamond making process. That book is. In that book, the process is given of how to create artificial diamonds, artificial rubies, and artificial blue sapphires. The exact process with the material content was invented by Bernoulli in England, and he took patent. And he took patent. Then the other companies started manufacturing diamond, artificial diamonds, artificial rubies, and all. But the exact process is given because it's done by the melting aluminum oxide, which is in the silica or alum, and mixing with the chromium impurity to make it as a ruby. So the exact process and materials are given. That was taken out. The same is done in many, because I don't want to go into spaceship, and because people it will look more like a sci-fi kind of like imaginary thing.
I actually want to talk about spaceships. That's what I was referring to, the space technology.
It's there. There are types of Vimana are there, the Shakun, Rukma, and they give speeds. And okay, you think like it may be a different designs. What people object it, like it's not aerofoil shape. It's not aerodynamic shape. There are many spaceship of NASA now which go into space. They are not aerodynamic. It's not compulsory to have a ship aerodynamic, because you are using jet engines and you are using a wind and the thrust against the wind. That's why you require the aerodynamic shape. If you are using different moving principle, then you don't need to follow the aerodynamic or fluid dynamic principles.
Right.
And those ships are mentioned in that. There are 32 secrets of the aeroplanes are given. Secrets means technologies. in which one needs to do the photography of the ground by infrareds. Now, when first this book came into light in like late 1890s or first 1900, at that time there were not even aeroplanes exist. No fighter planes were there at that time. So how someone can imagine about infrared photography of the ground, or sending some electromagnetic low electromagnetic waves, so to change the perception of the people in the other spacecrafts or the enemy spacecrafts, like altering their brain waves, their perception. There are descriptions of radar. There are descriptions of television screens. These are not made up descriptions, because along with it, when simple technological advancements I find, which these people have stolen, like there was the European people never knew how to get pure zinc.
Okay.
Because what happens, zinc's melting point is zinc's boiling point is very low. So if you try to separate it from its core, there was no method. And in Rajasthan, there were foundries. There were furnaces where they were separating zinc, and the zinc was exported from Rajasthan refineries to Europe. And some British historian of Royal Geographical Society comes, he takes the technology, the patent is taken in the England, and then those refineries are shut off in Rajasthan.
Wow.
This train, you will see there was a glass making process. Hardened steel was made in South India and in Jharkhand.
So that's how all these
even we see the basic mechanical industries or the alloy making, that's there. And then there are the spaceships, the interplanetary vehicles, and all those details are there. Because we have tidbits of information. Like we have only like 5-6 books with us. Those books mention around 300-400 books, but those books, we don't know where are those books. Maybe in Vatican or maybe in some German libraries. They are not in India, at least, because I have searched all the manuscript catalogs of the major libraries in India. Those books are not there. Not even in manuscript forms they are there in India.
Wow.
They are gone from India.
Huh, that's super interesting. Yeah, whoever has it, bring it back to us. We're looking for it. So I want to talk about heroes that are not included in our history books. A lot of what we've been taught I think, is a version that is written from a different perspective, right? So from the Indian perspective, we don't have any heroes that we can, like you talked about Vikramaditya. I didn't know about it until this conversation. I didn't know about Amish Tripathi wrote a book about the King Sulekha. I think I said it right. Suheldev, yes. So I didn't know about it until I saw that book. I want to talk about some of these heroes. At least one person, if you can talk about, that you find is we mentioned Vikramaditya, so we can talk about him in further detail, or we can find somebody else that you think should be included in our history. We'll start with Amey.
I think when we talk about including one person in the history, it would be like a big insult to our culture. We have got hundreds of people. They were like heroes in different areas. So I think considering only one would be like very, very difficult. I mean, for us, we have to first accept our Lord Ram as a hero, right? We accept Lord Ram as a hero in our culture. We celebrate Navratri. We just finished Navratri and Dashera and everything. We consider Ram. But where do you find Ram in our history? Ram is not in our history because they say Ram is a god, is a mythology, and he's not part of the history. That's another false story. What about Krishna? Is he there in the history? No, he's not there in the history. There are a lot
Right.
of characters that we can imagine which were important for our culture. They impacted us to a certain extent. They designed our culture. We still follow their traditions in many ways. And Hinduism, as Supreme Court said, is a way of life. Okay, we can consider it as a way of life, but it gives you a lot of value which makes you a better human being. So it is important for us to consider all these characters from the history and bring them to the younger generation. Like I'm very happy with V. He is like a very young guy and he has got so much of knowledge about the Rig Vedas, Upanishads, and everything. So let people read that. Let the younger generation understand, and let them decide whether they want to accept this fact or whether they want to accept the modern history. I mean, I already think the modern science and modern technology is gonna get sooner or later very much exposed because we are finding out so many trends in the technology which are much more similar to the scriptures which are mentioned in our Rig Vedas and our other scriptures. So this technology already existed in India. The only thing is like the widespread of this technology stopped. Why it stopped? Because I will give you a very small example. Is like the invaders started destroying our temples. So the scriptures and everything which were in the temples, they were destroyed. They were like burned. Uh, the walls were damaged, so we don't know what was inscripted on these walls. And then when the invaders started ruling India, there was a fatwa given in Turkey that to ban printing when printing press was invented in Germany in 15th century. So that's where the modernization in Europe came forward. So they started printing books. It started from Bible, of course, but they started printing books and spreading across. And this fatwa from Turkey came from, if I'm not mistaken, is Ottoman Sultan Selim. Yeah, he said we should ban printing, and this was adapted right from Turkey to Middle East to then reaching our Indian subcontinent. So we missed out so many years in between that our people who knew something could not write and spread it across. Okay, we don't even know in the last 400, 500 years the books which are written, where are those books? Now, maybe Kutubananda knows better because he is reading a lot of things and he is traveling in the libraries. But to a common man like me, we don't know that. What has been written, what has been published, no. Then came the Britishers who started printing books and spreading across in the form of education. So in this form of education, they printed only things what they wanted to print.
Mm.
So the history is always very subjective about who is writing the history. When you are writing the history, you will write it from your perspective. When I am writing the history, I'm writing from my perspective. Doesn't mean that is the authentic history. So I'm a firm believer that in India, instead of having this education system, to scrap this education system and bring our heroes back will take ages because it has to go through a lot of judicial process and it has to be challenged. A lot of evidence has to be produced. Why this was wrong, why this was right. This will take 100 years at least. Take it in writing. It took 450 years for Indians to prove that there was a Ram temple in Ayodhya. A very, very simple example. Now, if you want to prove about history, whether it was 5,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, it will take ages in the Supreme Court. My simple suggestion in the modern era is that we have to start a Hindu board. We have to start a Hindu board where we give Hindu education to people. At the 10th standard level, it is recognized as a similar 10th standard level here, and let the parents decide where the kids want to go, whether they want to go to a convent school, whether they want to go to a Hindu school, because already the Islam has got madrasas which are recognized as an official education in India. Why not we have a Hindu board, and then they can teach the students about the Upanishads, the Vedas, and the Puranas.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a very good point because even over here, I see in America, we have Catholic schools, high schools that are based on the Catholic teachings. So why not
They,
have a Hindu school, Hindu high school? I've never seen that one. I've seen a Hindu university over here. Recently, they started one, Hindu America University, but I haven't seen a high school or lower grades. So that's a very interesting point.
I will
Ankit,
surely tell you in the Hindu America University also you will find all leftist people.
what I want to say in this, like Amit just said important point about print print books. When the British started printing the books, they got the first advantage of controlling the knowledge base, because there was no people in India who can read also at that time. So they print whatever they wanted. They manipulated the books. They manipulated religious books, historical books, science books, and they put what they wanted. Now, in the age of social media, initially they were claiming like it's for everybody, it's free speech, but now we know it's not. What I will say, like he said, it's very difficult to change the syllabus or textbooks. We should not give validity to these people. We should not accept them as an authority, like some Yale University person who is creating theories of South Asian history, or some Oxford historian, or some historian from JNU or in Pune University. We should not accept, and we should not publish our literature in their academics. We don't need acceptance from them. Those who are doing criminal things in the academics and who have done the criminal jobs in the history, in the Indology, we don't need their authority or their acceptance in anything. And what happens mostly, the people like us who want to put these unsung heroes, the history, the true Indian history into the print, they are waiting for their approval. Like what Romila Thapar is never going to accept this. Or any other historian who is getting 2 lakh salary in some Indian universities. He is never going to accept about the Mahabharata or the Vikramaditya or anyone.
interesting.
It's like in social media now we are talking.
So give me a
So we
few
have to
good.
continue this movement.
This reminds me of a very small incident. If you give me a minute, Varun. So,
Sure.
there's I think 1 or 2 months back, there was a video viral on Twitter, which I saw. Adri Tushki, she is one of the biggest enemies of India right now. She's a historian, right?
Yeah.
She was standing here in the Indian Hall and she was talking about glorifying Aurangzeb. And her entire team is doing research to glorify and tell people that how Aurangzeb was a great leader and how Aurangzeb is misled in the history. So what they are trying to do is like now the perception of Aurangzeb they are trying to refine, and they are trying to push this narrative in everybody that Aurangzeb was like larger than life figure. Okay. So one Indian person stood up in this hall and he said, "Do you even know the history of Americans? Where the Americans come from?" They said like entire history of Europe and America is coming from the invasions and the barbarians and the wars. Do you even know about their history? And she immediately said, I mean, these are the champions of free speech. She immediately said, you sit down or I'll throw you out of the hall. These are the same people who
She also played the victim
intolerance. Yes, I'm a woman, I'm a historian. These are the same people
yes,
who
exactly.
tell you.
Anybody?
Yes, Ankit.
Ankit, go ahead.
Anybody aware about the true Indology on Twitter?
Yes, everybody.
True Indology.
Yes.
So he debunked all her claims on Twitter.
Yeah, this debunk what I am saying, they are criminals.
Right.
She is doing it with finance from the Pakistani agencies, like that William Delempile, who is again glorifying the Mughal kings.
So they basically their agendas. They're not talking.
They are not historians. They are
They're
agenda
all-
makers.
But the problem is they get authentication on these fake studies from
Yeah.
American universities.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they will be associated to say Harvard, Stanford, Yale, or some other big universities. And they said, hey, who are you Indians? You know, you're like poor guys coming from third world. We have got this authentication coming from America. So the
Right.
first thing is like we have to reject, as Kutubananda rightly said, we have to reject the claims, whatever they are bringing to us. I
So
mean, legally, we are not in a position to reject it. I will tell you very frankly, because everything will be damn challenged in Supreme Court. This all court system, all law system is designed to suit this leftist agenda. All the laws are also British-made laws, what we are using in India. The constitution we say, but the constitution has adopted the laws which were there in the British era itself. So other than Hindu board, I don't see any solution to bring
Right.
this into.
So Kutupanda, I want to talk about, you mentioned sources of material that people should read outside of these textbooks. So what, can you give some sources, like where can they go and find these information, or how did you find the true information?
Like I said, the PN Oaks books are there. They will give you general idea. Then I will suggest read from the original. Like get the whole complete Sanskrit with translation, either in Hindi or English or in your language, and read it, because reading the interpretation of the Indologists is very risky. And that's why I will suggest read the original Mahabharata or the Puranas. That will give always the correct perspective. Because if some person is writing about it, he always bring his own interpretation in it.
So is there a translation that people can read, or you're saying read the original script?
I will say don't read that Bhandarkar Institute critical edition. In the Mahabharata, what they did, they removed the part, because they have these concepts like if the book is bigger, then it must be newer. And the old books must be some short books. So they removed many stories.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, regarding Mahabharata also, I think there are 3 versions of Mahabharata in India.
Yes, the most
One is the
detailed
Gita
version is the Kumbakonam version.
Yeah. And where do you get the original scripts? There was a question from the audience.
Yeah, that Subramanyam Shastri published the whole complete Mahabharata long back. It's in the Sanskrit only. Because that total translation is not done, I think, in English. Only the critical edition is being translated again and again, like which is published by the Bhandarkar Oriental Institute. So, like that, even if you read Bhavishya Puran, I will say forget any other Puran. Read the Bhavishya Puran in total. That's Hindi translation is available. You can get in online also.
Okay.
That talks about 4 lakh year of history of Kali Yuga. Not 4 lakh, 2 lakhs year of history. Then there is a big like Ice Age type kind of gap.
I think
Bhavishya Puran is
you wrote a wrong
right
name,
now.
I think, Varun. Varun, you wrote a wrong name. You wrote Subramanyam Swami. He's a politician.
No, that Subramanyam Swami is different. This Subramanyam Shastri.
Sorry. Shastri. Oops. I heard Swami.
No.
Subramanyam Shastri. Let me correct that. Sorry, go ahead, Ankit.
I don't remember what was I saying.
The Bhavishya Puran is adulterated because in many verses it refers to Muhammad and
No. It's not adulterated. That's why the problem is what Bhavishya Puran says, like King Bhoj from the Parmar dynasty went to Makkah in 7th century with Kalidas and he killed Prophet. Now here again the same story like Vikramaditya. because these people accept only the Bhoj in 10th century. There were 5 kings of Bhoj, 5 to 7 kings before him. And one of him in 7th century did attack on Arabia to kill Prophet. And that is given in Bhavishya Puran. Now, because so much interpolation is done in history, we cannot even think like this might have happened.
Right.
And it's clearly mentioned he was the incarnation of Tripurasur. The story is there in Bhavishya Puran. If there are some stories related to Bible or Muhammad, we don't need to reject it, because the Bhavishya Puran, that Pratisarga Parva, is about the future of the Kali Yuga. So obviously it will have the stories of Islam and Christian and other things. It has detail. There are stories of 10,000 years of Vikram era, 20,000 years of Vikram era. And that's why that book is not published anywhere. You will not get. Even those who publish that Bhavishya Puran in Sanskrit, they publish in short. The complete Pratisarga Parva of Bhavishya Puran is not easily available. In new, old books are available like 50, 70 years published. Those are available on PDF. But if you want to buy new, you will not get Bhavishya Puran anywhere. Complete Sanskrit.
I have the PDF of old version.
Wow. Can you send it to me? I'd love to start reading that.
I will send it to you.
Thank
Sure
you.
thing.
I think regarding Mahabharata, Gita Press has got a lot of books. So those we can trust to a certain extent, I would say.
Okay. So you said those are original books?
Yeah, because there are a lot of, if I'm not mistaken, there are some 3 versions of Mahabharata which are rolling in modern India. One is coming from Bori. Someone mentioned, I think Ankit mentioned, yeah. So then there is Gita Press and there's one more. So the third one, I can't remember the name, but that is the more dangerous one. It talks about Mahabharata being a very casteist and very dangerous thing of supremacy and everything. So even when you talk about Mahabharata, there are different versions available. So it's hard to trust which one, because I see a lot of writers on social media write about Mahabharata. Then again, they have to give the references of the same incident in 3 different books, and then at some incidents you will find all 3 are talking about some different things. Something happened, the other book says, oh no, it didn't happen that way. So it is very difficult to find out which is the authentic information. And there, I think we have to trust someone. So I would say is like go with Gita Press, because their history about writing things is far better than the other ones. But of course, originals is original. But when it is not available in the language that we can read, not everybody can read Sanskrit and understand. When I had Sanskrit in the school, but if you can give me a text to read in Sanskrit, I cannot read.
Right.
So obviously, I will prefer reading in English or other language.
So that's a great point, Amey. Thank you for bringing that up. There is a comment from our audience that talking about history, India's history in descending order, don't you think we have been taught too much about Gandhis and Nehrus? In fact, we have been taught to call them Bapu and Chacha in our Almer when they were in school. So I think somewhere Indian education system was manipulated purposely. And that's a very valid point. I want to bring this up with V to talk about kind of what, you're in high school right now. What are you learning? What kind of stuff, Indian history are you being taught, and how do you agree with it? Do you not agree with it? What's going on?
Yes, I agree with it, because starting from the 5th standard, the 5th standard to 10th standard, nowhere in the textbooks it is mentioned about the Hoysala empires, about the southeast expansions of the Chola empires, of the Chera empires. There is nothing mentioned about the Hindu kings which ruled the Southeast Asian kingdoms. There is nothing mentioned about the spread of Buddhism and the spread of Hinduism in Afghanistan. We also find Lalitaditya Muktipada missing, and he was a major king. So the Raja Tarangini attributes him to have ruled till the Chalukyas. So it's almost till Narmada, that king in Kashmir he rules from the highlands of Tibet, Afghanistan, to the borders of Chalukyas. So we find him missing. There are many kings, many kingdoms, and purposefully Hindu kings and the Hindu time period is omitted. So the 7th standard NCERT history book talks about how the administration of Alauddin Khilji was reformative and all this, but they forget to mention about the Ganarajas and the kingdoms in the North India. They do not discuss the Janapadas and Mahajanapadas deeply. They just mention them that these existed and okay, let's move on. So the main focus is about the glorifying invaders. The each and every tomb is explained very
in depth.
deeply, and how the architecture is amazing. And so I think it's okay because it was our history and we need to learn about it. But why are we ignoring the Hindu kings?
Right. Very true. Yeah. I mean, I
So
agree that there's so much that's being left out, and I say it's being conveniently left out from our history books.
I
Ankit.
find it
Moreover, in the
I find it actually depressing because there is no mention of the Hoysala kingdoms. The Hoysala architecture was at the level that they carved lathe-turned stone monolithic pillars that even today are somewhat difficult to do. With the machinery, the human operated machinery totally of the muscle power. From the monolithic lathe-turned pillars to small 0.2 diameter holes. They had done so much advancement in architecture, art, literature, but there is nowhere mention of them.
Wow. Ankit, go
exactly.
ahead.
Moreover, in the nationalist movement too, Subhash Chandra Bose is conveniently ignored from the nationalist movement. The Indian National Army, their role in Andaman Nicobar, in Singapore, all of the struggles they had in Assam, everything is ignored conveniently, and all the credits given of the nationalist movement is to Jawaharlal Nehru and say Mahatma Gandhi. Uh, but we haven't gave the due credit to Subhash Chandra Bose. And as Ityas Chakra said, there is no mention of Hoysala Empire as well as Chola Empire, Chera's Empire. Rightly said. Moreover, the Kailasha Temple in Ellora, the Kailasha Temple in Ellora, it is a wonder of the world. I mean, the best architecture. It is not an easy task to carve a monolithic temple from top to bottom. It is a very humongous task done by our ancestors, and that too with the mega technology that was available with them. Since still we have not studied about it in our history textbooks anywhere. Uh, so I think the history that we read is a little bit manipulative. We haven't studied about Rajendra Raj Cholavan, who extended the empire of Cholas to Southeast Asia, to Vietnam, Myanmar, to Singapore. Uh, he extended his boundaries to Ganga, the banks of Ganga. He also assumed the title of Chola, Gangai Konda Chola, which literally means the Chola king, uh, who won the territory of Ganga. So we have no mention of Rajendra Raj Chola. Entire Chola Empire, actually, the Chola Empire has been a very important part of Indian history. They have ruled for like continuously for centuries. Still,
Wow.
we don't know about them.
Yeah, we don't talk about that for sure.
Exactly.
Sri,
No,
you want
regarding, I would like to add to
to add?
Ankit's point where he was saying about Subhash Chandra Bose. Yeah. So Subhash Chandra Bose clearly mentioned during the Second World War that we have to put up a force right now against the Britishers because they are like hardly few lakhs of British soldiers on Indian soil. If we throw them out, this is the right time we take the independence. But that didn't happen because Gandhi did not accept this proposal, saying it's like, no, no, no. Right now, Britishers are at war. Our primary responsibility is to support them in the war, not to fight against them. They said, like, fine, then I will go and find my own way. So he went and spoke to the Germany, and then Germany sent him to Japan. And from Japan, he found this force. From there, he started this war from East Asia, Southeast Asia to India. And then in 1942, when these forces were like emerging, and then probably people could see, okay, Subhash Chandra Bose can give a slogan of "Tum mujhe khoon do, main tumhe azadi dunga." And before it could make a noise in India, Gandhi did a very smart thing. He said, "We will do a quit India movement to Britishers, a very silent protest, and we all go and we sit inside the jail." So what happened is like all the educated youth which could have revolted against the British are now sitting inside the jail. Mm. So Quit India movement is still celebrated in India. I don't know why, as a very big significant incident. But basically Quit India movement was designed to benefit the Britishers. And what basically these politicians in pre-independence era were doing, they were just delaying the independence. And finally, they allowed the Britishers to decide when they are going to give the independence. And the independence date was decided in June 1948. But once the Britishers decided to give the independence, they were least interested in India. And this was started after the mutiny of 1946, February 1946. They were least interested in India. So they left India and they decided on 9th of August 1947, the borders of India and Pakistan were drawn, and 15th of August, the independence was declared. 14th of August in Pakistan, and we took it in the midnight, so it became 15th of August for us. So within 5 days, the transfer of people cannot happen, right? So if this would have been the regular date of June 1948, so a lot of chaos about the partition riots and wars and the Kashmir issue could have been avoided. So I think these are dark things about what Gandhi and Nehru did to India, which has a very long-lasting impact even till date, is not mentioned anywhere in our history. People don't even talk about it. It's a kind of a taboo system that if you stand in an official government platform and you speak about these things, you can be prosecuted.
Wow.
This is the sad story of India. And regarding the Kailasha temple, a lot of scientists have said that without the modern tools, this temple could not have been carved. So there would have been some technology like a laser, which we don't even have today.
Wow, that's so super interesting. You know, it's and then on top of that, we've been taught to celebrate Gandhi and Nehru for everything that they've done. So Sri Kutupanda, I want to talk to you about the same question. Certain things in history that are not added in our history books that you'd like to see there, or something that's maybe projected in the wrong.
No, the history of India is totally focused on Delhi oriented. But again, they focus it post Mughals. Before that, the history of Gupta, Samudragupta, it's mentioned, this history is taught in the BA history syllabus or MA history syllabus. But that's for those students who accept the historic as their research subject or as a career. But the from first standard to 10th standard, that's the major period in which general textbook what history is taught.
Right.
It's totally one-sided because they want to balance at that time. They don't want to create the invaders as an enemy. They don't want to project the invaders as enemies. So, and I want to say, like, I think in one post you made, like, what was the technology or the science in the Mughal times? there was no technology or science in Mughal times. They didn't build anything. They are given credits of like they brought some ark construction. Like Hindus didn't know how to create a dome, or so many temples are there in South India, in the northeast, in the Kashi, and they are saying we didn't know how to make a shikhar on the temple. We didn't know how to build ark. So the Mughals gave us the architecture. Then some Lodi or some Ghori built a grand trunk road. That's also lie. The grand trunk road is since Mauryan days.
Wow.
Because the Ashoka put his inscriptions, or both the viharats, they were built nearby the highways. And all these routes, like the current NH4 highway or the Mumbai Delhi road, or this Grand Trunk Road which goes up to Kabul, those roads were ancient highways. And they constructed the vihar, the Buddhist temples because the Chandragupta Maurya was converted into Jainism, and then Ashoka got converted into Buddhism. So they built those structures along the highways. The Mughals are given credit. There is no. They just took all the buildings.
I want to talk about, you mentioned Tejo Mahal. So can you talk more?
Taj Mahal they took.
Yeah, can you talk more about that?
No, that was palace of one Rajput king, Jai Singh. And that was outside, it was a big palace made in white marble, and inside there was a Shiva temple. And that was totally taken over by Shah Jahan. Like similarly, Fatehpur Sikri. Now you know about the Qutub Minar.
Right.
Qutub Minar is a Vishnu Stambha.
Right.
The Megasthenes and then Apollonius, those tourists have mentioned it. They call it as a Stambha of Helios. Helios or Hercules, I think. Their Greek god, they equivalented with Vishnu. And it has inscriptions also on that pillar. An iron pillar, 2,000-year-old iron pillar, which hasn't rusted yet. And no one knows how to cast such iron pillar, which cannot rust for 2,000 years.
Right.
And that pillar is inside that some Muslim structure. Then Fatehpur Sikri, then now the Red Fort where our Independence Day is celebrated. That is also not built by Mughals. They didn't build anything. What was their construction expertise was to break the idols, break the symbols of art, because Islam hates art, any form of art. To break the art, then put the tiles which shows the Quranic lines. If you break open the tiles in all these monuments, you will find the Hindu structure behind it. Same in Taj Mahal.
Wow.
There are underground chambers in the Taj Mahal. They are closed by archaeological department. And similarly, some tiles are put. Because if you see, when it's small, like if you even have studied architecture or Shilpa Shastra deeply, you have just eye for beauty. You go to these buildings like Red Fort, Fatehpur Sikri, Taj Mahal, you will find it ugly. Current buildings, I am saying. There is no art, like some just white marbles are there, and on that some lines are just pasted.
Yeah,
in comparison with Kailash temple or temples like Chidambaram temple, Tanjore temples, it's nothing. There is no art in these Muslim buildings, because the earlier art was totally broken, and
Right.
they made it just copy paste.
Super interesting. That's what I did for my college papers.
Just one point regarding Kailash temple. Aurangzeb had put 1,000 men to destroy this Kailasha temple, and they hammered this temple for 3 years. Okay, the stone is so firm that they could not break. So if you go today to Kailasha temple or maybe Google some images, so you will see the elephant monuments which are there outside on Kailash temple. The trunk is broken or something is broken. Some parts are damaged. They tried a lot to break this temple, but they just could not because that stone is so hard. They could not break it.
Wow. You know,
So
only
they
if they have
destroyed a
taken
lot of
those,
temples.
only if they have taken those 3 years to carve a whole other temple, they could have done that instead of breaking down temples. That's super interesting. Ankit, you want to add something that our history books you wanted to cover? Any last words?
Yes, I would suggest a book to read about the points I mentioned about the like the Chandragupta, the merging of two major kings. The points like this about Vikramaditya. The book's name is Kalyuga Raj Vrittant. If you're mentioning in the caption Kalyug Raj Vrittant, the book, this is the book name, and it mentions entire history of all the kings after the Mahabharata war, and all the accurate times of their rule. Author, I don't remember the author right now.
No, that's from
Actually,
the Bhavishyotter Puran.
sorry.
That book is from the Bhavishyotter Puran,
Mm.
and that was published by Narayan Shastri, I think, uh,
Yes, yes.
something like that.
I was given the archive of that book by the admin of a group I mentioned about, who are currently working on Mahabharat, dating the Mahabharat war.
Okay.
Yes.
Venkatachal, G. Venkatachal, something like that. Some Andhra author, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. We can find that and I'll send it out in our
Yeah.
resources. Yeah, that's a good, very, very good point. Yeah, let's bring up some resources that people can find to find some true information. I know we mentioned a few already. If you have any other resources, you could share them with us right now. Amey, if you want to, do you have anything else? Any
I
other
will send
books?
it to you on social media and then maybe you can circulate through your Instagram account or something.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, if you can think of any, send me those resources. I will send out an email to all the participants so they get a list of the names of the books that we mentioned and other sources that, to find this true information, because it's really important. I mean, without providing them the sources, we can talk about it all we want, but if you don't provide them the sources, the right places to look for these
The author is Kota Venkatachalam Shastri.
Okay.
look at that.
But Varun,
His books
my
are there on the archives.
On the archives. Okay. Thank you.
And he wrote about all these points, and he provided the true genealogy and his timeline for the Indian kings, Puranic kings.
But
Right.
Varun, my only point here was that instead of we coming from 5,000-year-old history to today's history, I think we should go in the reverse order. We should go from our present history from pre-independence era to 5,000 year history, because in this middle, this 500-600-year-old history, to debunk that history is very important. Unless and until we debunk this history, we cannot go into the Puranas and the empires what we had in India.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. Yeah, because that's been the focus of our education system too, is all of the last few, so if you can go back, reread the stuff that, the truth about the last 500-600 years, and then go further back so we can have a
Also,
better.
I come from study a lot about Shivaji's history. So Shivaji's history, if I could remember in the school, what I studied was mainly about where Shivaji was attacking or where they were like guerrilla warfare or the wars or the Panipat war and all these things. They never talk about the civilization of Maratha Empire. What was happening inside the empire? If you talk about Rajput Empire, people will talk about some treacheries happened in Rajput, but they will not talk about the culture of what Rajput was having, what was transferred from their people, what was followed in terms of tradition. So these 500-600 years in the past are more important. and then we can go deep into the history, and then we can find out about everything else. This is my personal perspective.
Yep, that's an interesting point. Okay, any last words? We're a few minutes away before I close out this session. Sri Kutupana, let's start with you. Any last words?
Like I said, read the original scriptures and try to find, maybe someone get inspiration, someone finds the lost books or how the history is manipulated, because we are fighting a war on our history in which the resources are manipulated. So the building blocks are not strong. So the game is played in by multiple levels. So it's very, very, very difficult. But still, if you stick to the sources, the traditional sources, we can build up our true history.
Okay.
And we can know our true history.
Right. Very interesting. Thank you. Ankit, any last words?
I would just like to suggest people to identify real heroes of the history. And for identifying, you will have to read as much as you can, and only believe the sources, uh, actual sources, like the sources we have mentioned in this discussion. We should not believe the manipulative history as dictated by the liberal and leftist Marxist historians. Uh, we should be able to identify what's true and what is wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Amey,
Yeah, I already made my remarks.
you're good? Okay.
Maybe.
And V, let's go with you. Anything that you want to add
Yes.
afterwards?
Yes. The most important thing is that people or the youth needs to understand and realize the true importance and the value, the vastness of this culture, to further investigate, to explore, and to understand it totally. So first we need to create some awareness that Hindu civilization is not about snake charmers and everything. There is so much magnificence in it.
Very interesting. Thank you so much, V. So I want to thank all of our panelists, Ankit, Amey, Sri Kutupanda, and V, for sharing your stories and engaging us in this discussion. I want to thank you to our audience for all of the questions and for your participation. Thank you so much. Once this is over, I will upload this video to YouTube and we'll send a link to everybody. If you guys have any comments about these conversations or any other topics that you'd like to see in the coming months, please let me know. Feel free to message me, email me. Our next conversation is on November 19th on the topic of men's abuse. And again, we will stream live on Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom. Also, please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe and turn on the notifications. I'm going to send a link in this chat, so please go there. If you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, that'd be fantastic. And that's all from my end right now. Love and abundance to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all of the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Nice meeting everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.